young people for you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome out to Cabinet on the 8th of October. Apologies from Councillor Ruth Holland and Councillor Janice Sylvester Hall. Partial apologies from Councillor Strachan, who is on his way in and will join us for his paper later on. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Interests to declare? No. Okay, as ever, if they arise during discussion of a topic, feel free to interrupt and declare at an appropriate point. Councillor Farrell, we're with you for most of the items tonight, so you've got your glass of water. Good.
I'm ready.
You're ready. Brilliant. Who is joining you for the local plan issues options from your officer cohort?
Who wants to join me? See, Chris, Pat, any of you really?
There we go.
But you can stay where you are. It's okay. I don't.
You're more than welcome to join us as well if
you whatever you wish. Shout louder.
Just before we go to the papers, like to welcome Councillor Norman, Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I always think it's important to hear much as we possibly can from Overview and Scrutiny. So Councillor Norman's kindly agreed to join us this evening to give us some direct feedback from ONS about some of the subjects we're discussing tonight. So Councillor Farrell, once you've delivered the item, I'm then going to go straight to you, Councillor Norman, for feedback direct from ONS before we open up for etc. if that's okay. Right, Alex, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is an important next stage in our work in delivering a new local plan for Lichfield District. We've had the call for sites a few months ago, and this is the issues and options document. This basically is a giant consultation with people across Lichfield District. Many different stakeholders hopefully will involve in this consultation that starts on the 30th of October and runs for a period of 6 weeks until the 11th of December. This it's a chunky document that you've got in front of you. So I'll try my best to see it, but it's effectively asking the most important people, really, the residents of Lichfield District, what they want to see in an ideal world as part of their new local plan. Given the backdrop of our call for sites, which was the landowners coming forward with where they would like to ideally develop. We're not talking just about housing here, it also could be industrial. So this basically sets out the issues and options and goes into some of the elements of how we'll consult with Lichfield District, including but not limited to speaking to parish councillors, going out to places that might not ordinarily reach the council, for example, schools, community centres, shopping centres, restaurants, pubs, anywhere really where we can speak to people about what they want for their local area. It's a really important document, and I'm sure the chair of ONS will talk about their feedback, but generally it was good feedback and some really helpful stuff came back from Overview and Scrutiny for this one. I'll leave it there because there's a lot to take in here, and I'll happily take any questions.
Brilliant. Thanks, Councillor Farrell. Councillor Norman, I'm going to head straight over to you for feedback from ONS first, if that's okay, before we head into questions.
I'll first congratulate you on suggesting members don't actually bother to watch the YouTube video. I make no appearance at all due to the camera system, and he said get me to come here and Will to do all the notes for me as well. Unfortunately, I didn't know Will had done the notes until after I'd spent all that time going through that video. See what's happening.
You're more than welcome to stay this evening.
I did actually tell my colleagues on the scrutiny committee that I reckoned that if I allowed just 1 minute on average for each page on Wednesday's agenda, I keep saying Tuesday actually, Wednesday's agenda, and have no comfort breaks, we should be finished by 5 AM. So I tried to explain to them that we weren't going to go through the whole of the local plan. Now the point was to look at the consultation part of it and make sure that the reports there, the information there is something that could be also understood by the public, because I have difficulty myself, and on some of the issues, of course, but that actually the best we can do on that. So the first item was about the asking for a full list of the consultation communications plan, and that's been promised by the cabinet member, so I'm grateful for that. We also make sure that the venues that are being there will be there for the public consultation and explaining what we're doing, that they're all able to be accessed by people with disabilities and so on. And we got some reassurance on that. Members did actually note that the issues and options document, of course, is a lengthy document. In actual fact, 3 or almost 4 times longer than the one that I was given at the pre-agenda meeting by the aforementioned Will. It might have been a shock for him as well. The thing is to actually, there was a possibility of a way of actually providing a summary to sell it to the public, to say this is an important document and give some sort of guidance there. I wouldn't like to have to write it because it wouldn't be easy to do, but apart from all the legal stuff that you have, as with public notices, I've always thought that you have a public notice, this is the legal stuff you have to do. There's some sort of vernacular that you can put in beforehand for people to understand what it's about, and then they can be pointed in the right direction. So that was a request by the members, and if that's possible, that would be great. Also requesting for a list of the consultation questions and the issues and options or documents there, just to see if, again, to help guide it for members of the public to actually look at the issues that we have to address as a council. There was a change to some order noting there, because there was a list of issues, but whether there was a priority order, that I think the cabinet member was would look at that again, because we've got something sort of lower down on the list. If you've got a list, I think you tend to see it as a priority list, and that may be worth looking at again to see if we have got a priority with that, with our strategic plan and with our plans generally going forward. And then the members suggested that the issues and options document be extended to provide council preferred options. That's most of what I've been saying, I think. And no changes proposed to address this, if we were told. But in the future, I think that was the possibility then, asking stakeholders for their views on these without prejudice. So it's all part of the consultation process. There were some typos, but they were drawn to the cabinet members' attention, officers' attention there. But it's a very big document. There was no serious problems with it as far as the scrutiny members are concerned, especially those who've been here before and know how much is involved in these documents and why important. And of course, we've got to wait for the result of the consultation on the National Planning Policy Framework and any other changes that might be coming about. So don't envy officers having to interpret that for elected members. But so on the whole, we were pleased with it, but there were just those comments that we wanted to make, and I know that the cabinet member and others were listening to that. Thank you. Thank you,
Councillor Norman. Alex, do you want to come back in before we go over to questions?
Yeah, I just thought it'd be helpful to members just to reflect on those points, and they were really helpful. The communications plan is just being finalised. We had a meeting before this meeting to get most of it sorted. The reason it's not fully been confirmed is because we're waiting for the schools to get back to us, that kind of thing. But as soon as that's in place, Chris and the team will get that out. There's a lot on there. It's a marathon mission for the team to get this out to people. You know, it's not just emails, letters, phone calls, but it's also being at places to try and catch people where they wouldn't normally be. So that's almost completed, and I'll send that to all members when that's out. I think that the executive summary is a good idea because it is you know, hundreds of pages long. So the team are currently working on that, I'm told. All venues will be accessible. That is confirmed. And the the other points are all in order, and I think they're all good points, and I can confirm they're being actioned.
Right, thank you. Yeah. Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I realise this paper is about the consultation of the new plan, but I think it's also correct that we sort of just ask a couple of questions about what's being consulted on at the same time as well, to make sure we get the right message out there. I've been through the consultation part, and I'm satisfied that it will reach the correct people and where we need to. I think it's really important that I think we've done a good job with this, by the way. I think it's really important for something this crucial that as many people in our district have as much feedback as we possibly can to us, because let's face it, this is going to affect how we build our district and the number of houses until 2043, I think it's called. So really important. I looked at the ONS feedback, and I agree with those comments. I think all of them help get the message across, and all of them help with the consultation. I think that's all completely crucial. Something just a couple of things I just want to double check, and maybe either yourself, Alex, or the team can answer. I just want to be really sure, because for me, we've seen a lot of urban sprawl around the edges of Lichfield city, especially over the past 5 to 10 years, maybe even slightly longer. And I think all of us around this table are fully aware of the need for more housing. It's obviously really important. There's more people, we need more houses, etc. There's an obvious shortage. So I think we're all with the plan to get more housing into the district, as our government wants us to as well. But for me, what's really important is we can do this, for me, with avoiding that urban sprawl around the edge of our current conurbations. So to that end, I just wanted confirmation from you, Alex, and your team that this plan is absolutely focused on a new settlement. That's what we're going to be putting forward, and just your confidence level on how that fits in with the required sort of housing supply until that new settlement comes online. If we could just tackle that one first.
Yes, a few things. Thanks for that. I'll go back to the beginning and say, I agree with what you say about consulting, but the only thing more important than consulting is to make sure that when feedback does come in, that is listened to, and in some cases actioned if needs be. Because I think in previous consultations, talking a long time ago, I think we could have been at fault for not listening to people. And the point of this new plan is we're meant to be listening to people in the community. If you go to page 15 of this report and you'll read my foreword, it does talk about me having enough of urban sprawl. So I completely agree with you there. I'd like this plan to be two major things. I'd like it to be community led. So we're going to speak to our communities and work out what they want in terms of housing. Of course, can't always get what we want, but we'd like to try our best to align ourselves as much as possible to the community need. And it needs to be infrastructure first. So we need to make sure that these communities are well connected, not just with roads, but with the right doctor surgery, schools, dentists, those kind of things. In terms of the local plan's desire for a new settlement, I'm really strong behind a new settlement. I think that's really important. The one thing we have to bear in mind is new settlements do take a while to come on stream, because there's a lot more, for want of a more technical term, admin involved in a new settlement. You're looking at a few thousand houses somewhere, and that takes a lot more work behind the scenes. And often with the build time, you could be looking at 5 to 10, maybe even more years before a new settlement actually comes to be, and that then possibly falls a little bit outside this local plan term. So yes, it is 100% our intention to go for a new settlement. But while that is going on in the background, we still need to be conscious that we might be pressured into more housing, higher housing targets than we first thought because of the new government. So we just need to bear in mind there's a lot of pressures on us as a council, when we finally find out our potential housing numbers, whenever those numbers come in, that we might have to infill with some other housing. So I'm really keen that housing isn't urban sprawl, is in the right areas in the district, the right kind of housing, and the right thing for our communities. That answers your question.
Councillor Barry does, and I appreciate your confirmation. That makes me feel much more comfortable. Just a couple of other things. Once we've figured out the numbers, the next thing for me that's really important, I think also to our residents, is the look and feel of the new housing. Can you maybe explain to us a little bit about how the district-wide design code that we put in place fits in with the local plan, and how that gets enforced?
Yeah, good question. So the design code, which I'm hoping will come to cabinet in December now, will be basically a blueprint for how we want houses to be designed in Lichfield District. It's quite innovative in that very few councils in the country have got a design code. We're one of the first, one of the trailblazers. And that design code is again a chunky document that looks at various different areas of Lichfield District, including the cities and the towns, rural areas, the industrial areas. There's a variety of different codes on there for different areas. To not just talk about the look and feel of actually what designs look like, but also how do they impact the area they're in. It goes down to various different granular details, including various different gardens, trees, car parking spaces, the lot basically, connectivity, and it's all in there. So it's a good trail for what's coming hopefully in December, but that alongside the local plan should give us a good blueprint for decent quality housing developments in Lichfield District. And the key for the design code, when we get to it, and hopefully Cabinet approves it in full council as well, is it's a code. So it's a set of rules on how we should deliver development as opposed to guidance. I think that's a really crucial distinction, because we should be telling developers what we want as opposed to the other way around, of us being almost thrust things upon us that we don't want.
Brilliant. I'm really glad you said that, because it's all very well having the guidance, etc., but we need to make sure we've got the teeth to make sure that actually happens. So really appreciate you confirming that. Just the final point is, we're all agreed, I'm sure, on this table that that there's a climate emergency occurring. This council even agreed to declaring a climate emergency back in maybe 2019, I think, if I'm right in saying. And for me, houses and where people live and how the houses are heated and how they generate their energy, how they charge their vehicles, all those sort of things, is absolutely key to this, because we've got lots of houses across the district. And for me, it's quite a hard thing to retrofit these things, some of these things, into existing housing. It's a lot easier to put these sort of things such as solar, heat source, ground heat source, electric charging points. It's much easier to put these into new houses. So for me, the ideal time to enforce it happening is when new properties and new developments are being built, and kind of gets ahead of the game. And I apologise, I've not been through the exact detail, but if you can maybe just confirm that the plan will also be enforcing those sort of climate factors in the new developments.
Yes, very keen for that, and I think it's a really good point. The design code also touches on some of that as well. If you want technical details, I'm sure the officers will give you the answers, but yes,
take that offline, that's fine.
But no, I agree, it's very important, and it will be on the forefront of our mind when putting together both the local plan and subsequent ones as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alex. That's all from me. Thank you,
Brilliant.
Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Cox, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Consultation period, 30th of October, 11th of December. Are we making any provisions for those parish councils that possibly meet early in the month, too late to put on an agenda, and don't meet in December? Because a lot of our smaller parishes will go through that kind of cycle. Will there be some assistance to them if they make inquiries, so that they are able to engage with the process of the consultation?
Yes, I'm just checking for a meeting I think that we've got next week. That is the newly formed parish network, which brings together all parish councils and all clerks, and representatives are invited to that. And Chris Brewerton is going to be doing a presentation to them about how they can get involved, and they're also then going to get all the clerks are going to get emailed the pre-notice that this is coming, so it can go on to the November agendas. Parishes that don't meet in December or meet after the deadline. So yeah, it's really important to me that parishes get involved. There's no better people than parish councillors for those that know their area inside and out. So yeah, we're making sure that we're ahead of the game on that one, so they don't miss out on the agendas. And anyone who hasn't engaged the consultation, I'm going to try and actively reach out to make sure that they were given the opportunity to engage.
Thank you. And my only other, which is really a comment, just supporting what Councillor Smith has said with regards to solar panels. I think it's imperative that we have solar panels on roofs of houses and possibly even all the warehousing that we have. You know, the corridor between Lichfield and Burton is flanked either side by warehousing. That's where the maximum use of solar panels should be, and I want to say not on open fields that is putting pressure on food security opposed to energy security. And I think that one has to be balanced against the other, and I don't think fields are the most appropriate places for them. So I'm hoping that we do put that into our going forward, that we are doing as much as we can to ensure that any house build does have solar panels, taking the pressure off our fields and farmers.
Yes, agreed. I saw your Facebook post earlier. I did agree. They're in the wrong they're in the wrong place. But yeah, I think that wherever we do put solar panels or things that are good for the environment, they've got to be put in the right places. Couldn't agree more.
Yep, thank you. First of all, I'd like to commend the team, yourself, Alex, obviously, for putting together a very complex amount of information in the documentation, and also the presentations that have been done as well. I found that they were first class, and trying to get across a subject that some people might find a little bit difficult with the complexity of it. And I'm sure when you do the consultation, the public will also feel the benefit of that clear communication as well. So I think it's a really good job, well done here. The part I'm wondering about is if there's any potential confusion that the public might have between the Lichfield District Plan 2050 and the local plan, bearing in mind, of course, that the public won't have as much information or knowledge as we do. So the question therefore is, have you thought about ways to make it absolutely crystal clear that they are two separate things and they're not sort of one part of the plan?
It's a good question. I hadn't thought about making them separate, but now you've said that, I'll make sure that I do. I think that what's really important about this consultation, actually more than anything else, more than the actual the dates and the titles, is that people have the questions crystallized to them, so they know what they're answering. You know, this is a massive document with loads of questions in. So when we actually go to the schools, to the pubs, to the country clubs to say, what do you think about this? We're coming up with basically like a card with some basic 4 or 5 maximum questions on. What do you think about this? Because if you ask someone to read a 500-page document, most normal people would say no thank you. But a question of how do you foresee the future of housing in your area, that's an easier question to answer. So yeah, I think that the communication has got to be key, and with all the communication things we're doing around this, whether it be social media posts or door knocking, phoning, emailing, it's got to be a consistent, clear messaging. Because you're right, there's a few plans that councils have, and Lichfield District 2050 strategy is a great one, and it's good for the whole district, but we're just talking about housing. So I'm quite keen to take dates and numbers off it and just ask them a question. How do you feel about housing in your area? And as we've discussed before, Councillor Whitehouse, you know, the answer can't be, I don't want housing anywhere. That's no good for anyone, and we know we need to have housing. So what we want to get from the community isn't just the answer of I don't want any housing. It's actually, you could put it over here because that's really good, or this area is lacking some industrial units. Those are the kind of answers we'd also like to hear, as well as no thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, come back. We've mentioned a couple of times the role of parish councils and how important they are at grassroots level, as it were, to communicate. I just wondered how you see parish councils actually taking the information, and what do they do with it? What would be the hints and tips to a parish council to use this to the best advantage?
Good question. And just to go back to my early point to Councillor Cox, I believe it's the 16th of October. I'm with diary issues at the moment, but I think it's the 16th of October, which is a week today, which is the parish network, and that's being held at Shenstone Library. So that is for clerks and parish councillors to come along and discuss issues, including in that will be a presentation from the how to get involved in this issues and options document. But yeah, no, I think it's what I want to hear is I don't want to hear the obvious. We all know where where the big sites have been. Most interest in this have read the call for sites and all 130 of them and seen where houses might be. But I want to hear the kind of stories that you won't necessarily hear in public, but actually somebody will tell you something about where there should be houses. And I think you can only really get that from parish councils, because lots of parish councils have been around for many years and they've seen their areas grow. They've seen, some areas in the district have started as very small settlements, now effectively turned into little mini towns. And so they'll understand the importance of development and actually what good development is versus bad development. So I think that's why that's what I want to hear from parish councillors, is actually what's worked in your parish, what hasn't worked so much, and what will work going forward. Because everyone's cognizant that houses need to be built, and they all, I would say everybody who lives in the district knows somewhere where they think houses should be built, and they definitely know somewhere where they don't want houses to be built. So those are the kind of anecdotes that I want to hear, and ideally if we can get them written down and given to us as part of this consultation, even better.
Thank you. One house. Super. I think my only comment, Alex, and I think it's been picked up at length, is that at this stage, consultation, local plans are boring, frankly, to most your average man on the street. I was about to say normal people then, but I'll say to average people on the street, at this stage it is very boring and dull, and it becomes very exciting when people see JCBs moving into a field next to their house. But of course, that's depending on the plan, it's 10 or 15 years too late. So I think our challenge and the challenge that we're giving you, I think at 2.4 in the recommendations, is to make this stage interesting and engaging to not just developers, not just house builders, not just landowners, but to our residents, our communities that do get excited in a decade's time. So how do we actually bring that forward to this stage so that people genuinely do feel that they have some influence on the areas in which they live? Don't need an answer tonight because we're delegating that problem to you to go away and rest. I think what we've heard tonight is that is a challenge, and we look forward to seeing you and the team, of course, execute against that. Not at all. So I think if there's no more questions on that, let's go to your recommendations then, Alex.
Yeah, I move those recommendations that I've just gone up to 2.1 to 2.4 in my name.
Great. All those in favour then, if you can indicate. That's great. Thank you. That's been unanimously passed. Can I reinforce Councillor Whitehouse's thanks to the team that have put that together. Fully appreciate the length and breadth of documents required to get us to this stage. So thank you. And thank you, of course, to Councillor Norman and to your Overview and Scrutiny Committee as well. Right, sticking with you, Councillor Farrell, Staffordshire's net zero planning policy commitments. This is a joint paper with you and the Cabinet Member for Economy, Ecology and Climate Change. We're flying solo this evening, so over to you.
Thank you, and you'll forgive me as I am scrolling down furiously to go and get to this one.
I'll not forgive you. Use bookmarks; it's easier.
Yeah. So this is thanks for that advice. This is like you said, a paper that's in my name, but also Councillor Sylvester Hall, who unfortunately can't be with us today. It's basically, in a nutshell, the Staffordshire Sustainability Board received a presentation outlining the climate emergency and emphasised the importance that local planning policies have in delivering sustainable development. So basically, this effectively sets out that Staffordshire County Council was asked each district reviews these policy themes and endorses them as informing the basis of future planning policies in our district. So effectively, this has been kind of handed to us by the upper authority, Staffordshire County Council, to review as a cabinet. I'd like to presume to make comments and feedback and do as we see appropriate.
Right,
Any comments?
thank you. I'll highlight just one word, the recommendations of 2.2, which is bold and
Explore.
underline,
Yes.
explore.
Explore.
Questions? Councillor Cox.
First of all, just to declare an interest as a county councillor member.
Well remembered. Good job.
Absolutely,
Councillor Cox.
absolutely. Obviously, I welcome this. I mean, I don't really say I've got a question for, but it is something that I very much welcome, as long as actually try and adhere to it as best as we can. I don't want to sound negative, but net zero is a heck of an ambition. I hope we can meet it, because it probably is necessary, for sure. Not probably, it is. But I'm wondering in the meantime that we're not setting ourselves up for an ultimate fall if that net zero is not met, because we are subject to lots of other anomalies that are contributing factors. But that was my only reservation to it. Other than that, I do commend the report, and it is the right thing to be doing.
If I could just briefly reply and agree with you that net zero and all the other things that are mentioned in this report are highly commendable, fabulous ambitions. Sometimes practicalities in life get in the way, and so I think Councillor Pullen's already highlighted that word explore. It's for us, I think, to just note this, see what we can do as a district to put our own contributions in. Probably also an interest I'm a county councillor, but I'm not entirely sure that interest is puts me off from talking about this, but I'll mention it. But yeah, I think it's just something for us to look at and be aware of.
Right, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I don't think it needs any kind of response, if I'm honest. I think obviously all these local organisations can all do their bit. Individuals can all do their bit, but I think really big part we can do ties back to your previous paper, Councillor Farrell, where we talked about the local plan and what we can do in terms of putting climate type factors within the local plan in terms of the new housing. I think that's a big thing we can do, and you just said we're doing that, so I think that gets us well along the way towards the ambition of this paper. Yeah, agreed.
Right. Any more on this? No, I think it's widely accepted that these are ambitions that we want to support. We should explore them. I'd imagine that most, if not all, of the ambitions set out in this document already exist elsewhere in policies, etc. But I don't think it hurts to ensure that all of the local authorities across Staffordshire are equally yoked in that regard. So it sounds like it's getting full support. Alex, I'll go straight to you for your recommendations.
Yeah, recommendations 2.1 and 2.2.
Yeah. You can support it. I'm going to think that's an abstention. No, that's support. Brilliant. Thank you. Unanimous. Still with you. This is the last one. Everyone will be pleased to know. Well, the last one of Alex's anyway. Infrastructure funding staff. We can bring in Stephen Norman on that previous. Alex, after you've delivered yours, I'll go straight to Councillor Norman for because I know ONS have got some views on this that we'd like to hear.
Great, thank you. So this is an important document because the council receives various different monies throughout the year from developments, and so it should. Section 106 money and also what's called a community infrastructure levy is given to not just the district but also to local parish councils on various different developments. And this is basically a infrastructure funding statement to establish where as a council we should ideally be spending this money. The clue is in the name, especially with community infrastructure levy, and this is for the community, and it also involves infrastructure. So it narrows it down to what various different things we can do with the money. But this gives you a kind of overview in terms of themes where we believe that the different money should be allocated to. For example, healthcare provision, transport infrastructure, environment and biodiversity, low carbon initiatives or a carbon investment fund. So this is the infrastructure list that we've come up with for the spending of this money, and I'm sure Councillor Norman will talk about the recommendations from overview and scrutiny. They were very helpful as well. And the report is in front of you, so I'll take any questions.
Right. Before we move to questions, Councillor Norman, is there any feedback from ONS that you'd like us to hear?
There wasn't a great deal, in fact, because insofar as the questions that were asked were answered, there I think that people were doing their job scrutinising, and there's a question about an error on table to 3.5 about the 10 pence, which I don't understand here, but Anthony denies all knowledge of it, so he wasn't advised, asked for advice on that one. I think the one issue was the point to make is that early this year, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee had the chance to actually comment on the previous system of bidding for the funds, and we made those comments known, and the Cabinet kindly took some of those on board, not all of them, but I think some of those most of those on board, I beg your pardon, and so we're grateful for that. I'll just refer to it, 2.21 in the appendix. The inclusion of a project or type of infrastructure on this list does not signify commitment from the council to fund, either in whole or in part, the listed project or type of infrastructure through infrastructure levy. I think I made a mistake actually of helping out the Cabinet member. He probably didn't need my help. I did use the word flexibility a couple of times for my members, and of course he had to quote with them, which is a disaster really for my reputation, but there you are. But that is it. I mean, that is a fact that you do need that flexibility to deal with these funds. So there was no issues there that members had that we could catch the Cabinet or the Cabinet member out on. We're grateful for the opportunity, and those responses, you know, we were acceptable. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Norman. I just anything more you wanted to add?
No, not at all. Other than it was helpful. So thank you to ONS.
Questions? Bill, over to you.
Thank you very much. The question I have is at local level, Councillor Farrell, when we talk about monies handed down to parish councils, I just wondered what role, knowledge do we then have as to how the parishes use that money in a structured way?
Good question, actually. I'll refer that to officers in a sec, because I don't know what the actual, from us as a district, what our say is over that. I mean, it's important when parish councils might be listening that they get themselves a neighbourhood plan made, because there's a real difference in what they can get in terms of funding. You get 25% of SIL money if you've got a neighbourhood plan, where it's 15% if they don't. So actually local communities could really benefit from putting together a neighbourhood plan. In terms of what say we have over what parishes can do with the money, I'm not entirely sure. I'd like to know the answer if any officers have that answer.
Yeah, so all parishes in receipt of monies are required to prepare an annual report, which they have to provide to us as a council annually, and those are published on the council website alongside structure report. So
I don't think we can tell them specifically what to do with the money. I think it was
it is up to those parishes to determine what they want to spend that money on, as long as it's towards infrastructure.
Okay, thank you.
Answer your question.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. More questions on this? No, I think just for me, this is a key part of transparency, I guess, isn't it? Where are we getting the money from? Where's it going? What are our broad ambitions to deliver? I know some councils go much further in terms of going right down to a real granular level over specific projects in specific routes over periods of years. I think either to your point, Councillor Farrell, or Councillor on who claims it, but that flexibility that it shares to actually set out what the strategic ambitions are without actually necessarily committing to specific project actually helps us, because frankly, particularly in local government, we want things change on a monthly basis at the moment, so it helps us to remain agile while still delivering against the strategy. So more than happy with what taken. Go to your recommendations then.
Yeah, thanks. 2.1 to 2.3.
Great. All those in favour? That looks like it's passed unanimously. Thank you, Alex, and more importantly, thank you to all the team who have helped those substantial. And to you again, Councillor Norman. Right, final item of the night. Over to you, Councillor Strachan. Medium-term financial strategy.
Thank you, and I'm very sorry that I was late this evening. It was a more than usually awful journey out of Birmingham. This is the progress report on how the Emergence medium-term financial strategy is going and how it's progressing. And as ever, I'm very grateful to Anthony and the entire finance team for their assistance in pulling it together. This MTFS, perhaps more than any other, certainly while I've been the cabinet member, is marked by significant uncertainty. The change in government and the potential policy changes that are going to be flowing from that have made this even more acute. Although it does appear likely that wider sector finance reform is likely to be delayed by a further year, which gives us perhaps something that we know is going to happen, because we're almost certainly looking at a single year settlement. Because we've had so many of those, we are no strangers to uncertainty. And so, as ever, we are preparing our medium-term financial strategy as best we possibly can, expecting a single year settlement and expecting that the next financial year is largely, from a central government perspective, to be business as usual and what we've come to know. Excuse me. The first thing that I need to reassure Cabinet on tonight is that we are planning from a position of relative financial strength, and hopefully that's been borne through by the previous updates that I've given and the Q1 update that I gave to the last Cabinet meeting, and that we're also now evolving from a position of financial planning, certainly so far as the major projects that this council is bringing forward, into a position of delivery, and that informs in large part the capital programme that is appended to the Emergent financial strategy. As ever, Leader, I will reserve my position on what our share of local taxation will be to the latest possible moment. You will see from the figures that are within the report that our tax base has expanded quite significantly over the national average over recent years, but our increases to our share of local taxation have been below the national average, again by a good 2 or 3 percentage points. And so I will maintain that there'll be a policy at this council of taking only what we need to deliver what we believe truly is best for the residents of this district. We are also assisted when it comes to local taxation, both on business rates and on council tax, by our very healthy collection rates. And that I pay particular tribute to Nikki Begley and the team, because they do continue to collect nationally significant rates of council tax, whilst also doing it with the compassion that I've set as the watchword in the team. I can see that there's been a very effective deployment of the local council tax support scheme in the last year since we brought that in, and I'm pleased to see that is continuing. Within this report, we do identify some of the key risks that we're looking at, and I'm not expecting to be able to give you answers tonight, or indeed that between the cabinet we're going to be able to answer those. Some of those will be whether our projections on staffing costs and the pay award are sustainable, given the difference between what is planned for and what was requested. The costs that we see emerging within the joint waste area, firstly by having to use agency staff because of the staffing shortage across that sector, but also the market-driven increases that we're likely to see as a result of a number of councils procuring food waste collections at the same time. And again, we plan for those. It's likely that some of the upfront costs will be borne by new burdens and Section 31 grants, but that is still a risk given the scale of the investment. We've reported, I know that it was dealt with at overview and scrutiny, which unfortunately I was unable to attend, the funding gap that we see in our addressing homelessness budget. And that is, again, sector-wide. It's being seen by a large number of councils. I know that there was a response that we put into HM Treasury, which was copied to both of our local MPs. I hope that they will be in a position to lobby on our behalf as we come forward, but I know that's affecting a lot of councils. But also the risk that's inherent in capital expenditure on our major projects that are coming on stream now. And we mitigate that by carrying contingencies and reserves across all of those, as well as you'll have seen reported to scrutiny that we're seeking LEP funding to support us in that, and we've commissioned Aspinall Birdie to help us with the paperwork, which I haven't seen, but I'm told is incredibly long and complex. So we've engaged some experts on that. Also within the report, we set out the timetable, and the next time that this will touch councillors is at overview and scrutiny on the 2nd of December. It then comes to Cabinet on the next day. I don't know whether by those dates we will have any more detail on what to expect so far as settlements, because that traditionally has come in the 3rd week of December. So it may be that there is, when we bring the report in January, it may be the whole skin on the bones. I will, and I haven't mentioned it to him yet, I will tonight have a conversation with the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny as to whether there is actually a great deal of merit in reporting to his December meeting, because it may be that we know no more by then than we know at the moment. But we'll come forward. It might be the January scrutiny is the better time to bring that in terms of getting the maximum input and the maximum detail for the time spent bringing the report. Finally, it was clearly on scrutiny's radar that the need for capital spend in the Burntwood Leisure Centre changing rooms refurbishment was coming urgent. That is a recommendation to add to the capital programme for this financial year of a £50,000 spend to refurb the changing rooms at Burntwood Leisure Centre, and I'm very pleased to see that that is funded entirely from the compensation reserve that we currently hold, which is doing its job very well, not only in keeping our existing centres open, but also now in contributing to capital spend in Burntwood, where it is badly needed. I'm sure there will be questions, so I'm going to shut up.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Strachan. Councillor Norman, is there anything you want to add from an ONS perspective at this point?
No, well, a bit, but I mean, Councillor Strachan has kindly referred to a few things. I will have to repeat that. I mean, the uncertainty, of course, we've had for some time, and probably more uncertainty now than previously because of the change of government. So I'm sympathetic to the officers' plight. I can also say, by the way, I didn't properly thank the officers. I did exclude, I think, but certainly say again, thank the officers for the reports on the planning issues and for the information we get on the finances. That's always good, and we never caught them out yet on errors of any sort. And by the way, Anthony was at the meeting and didn't seem to need any help this time, did he? From Councillor Strachan. I have to mention this, even though the cabinet members mentioned it. The first bullet point: members highlighted that outstanding capital investment in Burntwood Leisure Centre needs to be a priority for funding in the MTFS. But don't mention that, I'll be very welcome back home. So
Done it, Steve. It's in the
I've
year.
done it again. I'm sorry, but it's got to be on record. From me. The leader agreed to circulate the budget consultation to us members, and we got that the next day. I'm grateful for that, leader. I shan't mention about the homeless pressures because, again, Councillor Strachan has kindly referred to that on the ongoing on pressures. This one here, members asked about the redirection of funding from the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Community Hub project in Burntwood and other options that had been considered. And the leader was going to provide details direct to members outside of the meeting, which I assume is in hand. So that's in hand. I'm being helpful there. It's in hand. Rest about the funding gap on the reserves, which we had responses to from officers or officer. The members asked also about the further support through the local council tax scheme. It pointed out that that's not possible. I did actually draw attention to the collection rate. This is me personally at the meeting, simply because I'd seen a news article that seemed to suggest it wasn't good. You get to pick out some very odd figures, but it has always been good, and it is still good, very good at this district council. I did want to put that record straight. If anybody's listening who haven't read the reports, again, the cinema, the GBS funding, and Aspinall Birdie, Councillor Strachan mentioned. So again, grateful for that. All the questions were answered and explained, and members' views were known, except the one that obviously tempted us with leader, which is our view about the council tax precept. And I'm sorry you weren't biting on that one. That's all down for us in our individual groups, of course. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor Norman. Is there anything you want to come back on off the back of that?
Not off the back of that, no. I think I addressed as much as I could in opening.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, in which case then open up for questions. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Doug. I'm really pleased to hear that Councillor Strachan did mention the website changing grade for Burntwood. As Cadman for Leisure, I've mentioned talking and pushing on this for a time so we can find some budget for it. So we found some budget, which is good. My only issue, just playing devil's advocate, just to check something on the numbers. We mentioned 50k we found for that project. My understanding was the project was more like sort of 350, 400k to get those completed. Are we finding the remainder from somewhere else, or have I misunderstood the monies on it? I'm not really good on monies, I apologise, but my understanding was it's a bit more than 50k to get it done. Can we just
Meaningful nod from the chief executive suggests that he can deal with this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the 50,000 that has been mentioned in the report this evening is a temporary fix. So we have a dry side changing room adjacent to the swimming pool. Our intent is to knock the wall through so that we can provide better changing facilities for those who want to use the swimming pool. As Councillor Smith has indicated, the full cost of replacing the wet side changing rooms is approximately £400,000, and we don't yet have sight of where the budget would come from, which is why we're keen to do a temporary fix at the moment. We are very conscious that the one issue that really holds us back in terms of Burntwood Leisure Centre is the wet side changing room. So during the course of this year, I will be working with the Section 151 officer to seek to try to find the remainder of the budget, obviously with the cabinet lead for finance as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that, because I think we did, for me, as we did a really excellent job with the refurbishment of Burntwood Leisure Centre at the point we took over from Freedom. And this really is the one thing remaining, is the wet side change, which is obviously important. So yeah, I'm really pleased here, and I'm going to keep pushing to make sure we find that extra money to do the full job on that. But thank you both. Cheers.
Right.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Well, Phil.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. Just a bit of clarification, please. Don't really understand the figures, but in section 3.22, there appears to be an opportunity to look at the baseline funding level, which we take at 41.1%. There seems to be quite a big gap between the national average at 65, the average of 65.6%, 52.3. I just wondered, is that a particular policy that we follow for a reason for it to be such a gap?
I'm actually going to let Anthony address how that is arrived at, because I know there's a lot of detail under what seems to be pretty simple numbers.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things I'd probably say with this. Each council is unique in its approach to business rates, because it depends on the type of businesses you've got within your area, the level of appeals that they're subject to, how successful those appeals are, things like the level of bad debts, things like that. So we've always taken a prudent line here, in part because the previous government, and I think the new government, have talked about a level of finance reform which would involve redirecting growth above the baseline funding level. So we've always gone with a prudent line there, so that if that risk does appear through some sort of finance reform, we're not overly exposed to it. Other councils might take a slightly less risk approach, but even if you, I mean, I suppose there's a couple of things to say that even if I'm wrong and we're too prudent, you get the benefit in the following year through the surplus. So the council doesn't lose out through that. But if we are right, then the impact to the overall budget should be less than if you're taking a more optimistic approach to the reform. So I suppose the point I would say is that even though we might be more prudent, we do get the benefit in a later year. It's not like it's money that we've lost.
Thank you for the explanation. Thank you.
Your question, yeah. Does the hand go? I think following just on from about future direction of travel, the new government at 3.13, where we talk about we're desperate for multi-year settlements. I think once we get a multi-year settlement, we might wish we'd had that settlement, that we wish we'd had stuck with the one we already had. In that the indications are, and it is just indications at this point, that councils or district councils, particularly councils like Lichfield, that have a relatively low need, are likely to be detrimentally impacted with lower funding. I'm just curious as to what steps we're taking now to perhaps protect us against that, or we actually fundamentally, whatever we do now, might not actually help efficiently address it.
The successive years of failure to implement the review of needs in local authorities has resulted in a series of single-year settlements, and as part of that, because of the failure to revamp the business rates regime alongside that, we've had the benefit of retained business rates and income at a significant proportion of well, significantly above what we expected in successive years. That has helped us no end in terms of addressing some of the structural issues that exist in local government finance, but also in bringing forward the capital projects that we are able to largely fund internally now without having to go out and borrow. So that is step one. In terms of whether we'll regret a multi-year settlement, it's possible that it may be painful, but at least we'll know what we're working with. That is something that we'll be able to look across the period of time that we have that settlement and respond accordingly. In terms of what we're doing to protect our position, we have, of course, historically reserved reasonably aggressively because we knew that we were going to need that money in the fullness of time, and we know that there are issues in local government funding that means that our reserves only decline, and they have not done so at the usual rate because of the retained income that we've had, and so we have a reasonably healthy reserve such that I believe we could survive all but the harshest structural reform to local government finance. And I think it's our historic prudence and the fact that we are in that position of relative strength to put us in the position that we're in. And for that, I thank not only the previous cabinet member from some years ago now for his approach, but also Anthony and his team for their prudence and caution. It's always lovely having a pessimist.
Yeah, right. Thank you, Strachan. I suppose then just one for me, which may or may not be able to answer. Government announced the autumn budget for 30th of October, but local government finance settlement not confirmed until back end of this year, likely beginning of next year. Do we think we'll get a clear sense of direction post some budget, or do you think we'll be waiting on until beginning of next year to really see where we're going to end up?
I suspect we'll be waiting on until December at least. Budgets tend to be about show far more than about detail, in my experience recently.
Okay. Anthony, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I suppose there's only a couple of things. So one of the benefits, I think, of COVID, I think it showed to government just how vulnerable local in terms of finance shocks. I hope that they've taken that on board when they look at the impact of significant changes on redistribution. So we don't want to get into as a rob Peter, pay Paul type situation where we solve the issues of adult social care and upper tier, but then create a multitude of problems with district councils. I genuinely think civil servants and the government have seen what that impact is, and that might mean they're a little less forthright in the approach they would take. We always respond to consultations to get our point across. The new government has also said it would like to end, I think they call it the bidding culture. So there's a lot of standalone grants that they're looking to roll in to the overall settlement. Now, that might help us because there'll be a bigger pot of money, hopefully, where it might not so much as if that is allocated on need. So it will go parts of the set, but a bigger pot might offset some of the reform. That's what I would say there. One other thing, and I'll throw out now, and this is quite a disappointing thing, is the previous government undertook something called the Hudson Review back in 2018, which talked about issuing the provisional finance settlement around the 5th of December each year and the final settlement no later than 31st of January. We've never actually achieved that. It's got later every single year. So it almost seems to be snuck out just before Christmas. It gives us next to no time to get any information out and for people to read it. So I would hope that we get a release of information a lot earlier. My suspicion is it will be more of a 1-year settlement this time, like Councillor Strachan says. Maybe there are some subtle small changes in that, but I think we're not going to find out the detail until after the comprehensive spending review in the spring of next year. And then hopefully there is a multi-year settlement. And Councillor Strachan's right, certainty is much better than what we've had to live with for the last 6-7 years. At least the numbers we get aren't going to be guesses, and so we'll have some substance to the plans we need to make going forward.
I think to round off Anthony's point on consultations, because we do respond to everything the government seeks to consult on. Within those consultations, we never ever tire of banging the drum for district councils and the highly targeted, very forensic approach that we can take, because we're big enough to make a difference, but local enough to know our population intimately and be able to deal with them. And so I think previously I've talked about planning and planning health into local plans. I think that's something that's very important. It's far beyond just the provision of surgeries and hospitals and things like that. It goes to leisure centres, it goes to planning walking routes, to planning cycleways. All of that is delivered at district council level, and it's something that we'll continue to play our role in.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. If there's no further questions, then I will let you go to your recommendations.
Thank you. I move recommendations 2.1 through to 2.4 standing in my name.
You can indicate. That's wonderful. Thank you. That is unanimous. It's Councillor Strachan and to Anthony as well. That concludes this evening's cabinet meeting. Thank you all.